in their work. So let me just say a few words about what I meant by sculpting space, and then apologize for just stating the names and the countries of the philosophical practitioners. They are all very established, very well known. We can share information later. I had this idea of proposing in Israel and somewhere else a process of grief and remembrance of lost ones in what I would call sculpting space, creating either a small space that would enclose objects of people that are gone, and thinking of how to create this either smaller or bigger space in a way that would represent the deceased or the memory, or through a process of philosophical practice that would go through objects and their representation and meanings in our lives. This came out of the 5 weeks difference, and I couldn't get rid of any of those. There are things, I lived in a mess for 5 years, so I experienced on my own body, in my own life, my incapacity to choose a few objects and to make such a space instead of lingering in their apartment and not being able to get rid of anything. But the project is just in its beginning, so I don't want to talk more about that. We will have representation of poetry, of drama, of literature, of painting, of music. We could have chosen other people, but this is what we have, and we begin with Rona Ferry, a fantastic, very prominent co-director, philosophical practitioner, co-director of the APPA in the United States. We talk today about poetry. Let me just say that many of us can talk about other forms of art. I do not use art in philosophical practice, but I would like to be enlightened by these talks. I asked everyone to be shorter, to talk either 10 minutes if they can, at most 15 minutes, so we have time for a discussion. Please, Rona.
Okay, may I have the first slide, Nastia? My topic today is philosophical counseling in the Renaissance. And the reason I chose this topic is because it establishes connections between philosophy, poetry, and the pictorial arts. And also, I think, teaches us about a very... What's going on here? A very... can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. A very, very interesting tradition of philosophical counseling that has not previously been explored. Philosophical counseling during the Renaissance involved an iconography. May I have the second slide, please? It was sometimes referred to in the literature as a language of mysteries, employing Greek and myth to allude to Platonic and Neoplatonic ideas. The pictorial and poetic arts used this common iconography in a tradition which dated from Horace and from Simonides, where poetry was viewed as a speaking picture. And thus the poetry and the visual arts were closely connected, and they had deeply philosophical dimensions. And they were used to counsel cultivated Renaissance audiences about human nature and about the nature of love from Platonic and Neoplatonic perspectives. Next slide, please. Some speaking pictures in Othello. I'm going to use Othello as an example, although I won't have time to give you the textual references or sources, because I have a very long paper on this topic that's forthcoming. The speaking pictures in Shakespeare's Othello are the twin Venuses, which were also in the pictorial tradition by Botticelli and Titian. I have the slides at the end of it, but I probably won't have time to show them to you. Venus Mars, which was painted by Veronese and Botticelli also, and the Venus Mars Vulcan motif that was painted by Mantegna, the Fettered Slave, the statues by Michelangelo, the Bandaged Cupid in Titian, and Calumny, which was painted by Botticelli and many other painters. But all of these speaking pictures you will find references to in Othello if you really look. Next slide, please. There are three, just as a reminder for those of you who may have forgotten, Othello has three main characters. Othello, a Moor and general, who is portrayed as a Mars figure. Othello, from the perspective of, and Desdemona, I'm sorry, his Venetian bride, portrayed as Venus. Why do we have this music? Are you getting that also?
Настя, вы можете выключить микрофоны тех, кто не говорит.
Oh, okay. Okay, and Iago, who is the third character, who is referred to in the play as that profane and liberal counselor, from the perspective, who has counsels Othello from the perspective of profane and bestial love. So what you have then is a play of perspectives, which overall you have two counselors in it, both of them with counseling from opposing perspectives, and there's also this play of perspective counsels the audience about the nature of love. Next, please. Now, what's important about these speaking pictures in Shakespeare's Othello is that there are metaphysical dimensions of this, and also other philosophical dimensions. The Venus-Mars union begets harmony in the universe. And so Eros, love, binds together opposites and transcends metaphysical dualisms. So when Othello doubts Desdemona's love, there are cosmic implications for him. Chaos has come again, he says. Next slide. And there are also metaphysical implications about the individual, because love is a force not only for unity in the universe, but also in the individual. So according to Neoplatonic metaphysics, love binds together matter and form. So a dissolution of love is a destruction of personal identity. And you find this in the play where Othello refers to himself as he that was Othello at the end. Finally, heavenly love, the sacred love that's mentioned by Plato and by Ficino, provides a means of transcending matter and time. So the dissolution of love is a fall into both matter and time with a consequent loss of freedom. And there are all these references to the fettered slave and the slave in Othello, and reminding us of Michelangelo's speaking picture of that. Lydia, I'm not seeing we started a little late, so I'm not sure of time. Stop me in 10 minutes, okay?
It's okay. Please keep talking.
And next time, there are also next slide, please. There are also epistemological dimensions. I have two slides about this, but I don't have time really to talk about this. But what I want to suggest to you is that this play, Othello, is a play about judgment. And it's a play about judgment, from different perspectives. And this is right out of Botticelli's Calumny. That picture depicts the foolish judge King Midas with ass's ears, and there's an innocent victim being dragged before him. Midas is being counseled by fraud and deceit, and then in the left-hand side of the picture, there's a nude Venus pointing upward, representing truth. So this is the picture that you have in Othello, because Iago's plan, this demonic counselor, his plan is to make Othello egregiously an ass, and he does that, as Othello admits in the end, as he realizes that he's been deluded and kills Desdemona after he kills Desdemona. Next, 2 slides, please. Oh, that's good. Okay. There are also moral dimensions of the Venus-Mars iconography. There's an exchange of attributes. As in the beginning, Othello has some of Desdemona's attributes of caritas and so on. But later on, as he becomes influenced by Iago, her attribute of caritas is replaced by Iago's attribute of jealousy. So you have Platonic and Neoplatonic psychology going on, and the audience would pick up on this. Next, please. The most interesting, I think, of the Venus, Mars, and other speaking pictures in Othello is that there are aesthetic dimensions. It was a commonplace in the Renaissance that the poet was a right popular philosopher, as Sir Philip Sidney says in the Apology for Poetry. And Tasso perhaps expressed this tradition most clearly in his treatise Del Poema Heroica, suggesting that the poet is an artist who constructs speaking pictures to teach and counsel and lead the mind through images to contemplation of the divine. Next slide, please. So Shakespeare was fully aware of this tradition in Sonnet 24, if you want to read that. He says that the poet's philosophical perspectives are better than the artist's perspectives because the philosophical poet can appeal to the heart. Now, what conclusions should we draw from this tradition? I think there's two. One, that the Renaissance tradition of speaking pictures is a very distinct and neglected tradition of philosophical counsel. And secondly, that philosophical practice has much to contribute to literary criticism, if only to avoid the psychologizing of literature. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vona, and I'm very sorry. I see I've pressured you to talk fast. This was fascinating. I think we are going to create a place when we can further the discussion, hear more from what you're saying, share sources, maybe through emails or another space for all philosophical practitioners. And I skipped, of course, the introduction I meant to have about philosophy's relationship with the arts, which is in itself an immense topic and very interesting one. But thank you so much for sharing this. This was very deep and interesting. It's a good opening for the panel, and I'm sure we will have questions at the end. So I would like now to move to Mike Roth from Switzerland, and to a very interesting topic of philosophical practice and drama. Of course, you touched about Shakespeare, so in itself it may be also a little bit of drama. But Mike, what are you doing with drama in philosophical practice?
Well, drama happens at the very beginning of the European philosophical tradition. The death of Socrates is the kernel of a tragedy, and the comedy of Aristophanes, The Clouds, starring the philosopher, as you can see here, is a stepping stone to it. Now, a little bit on the wise points of different kindred languages. The German word for drama is Schauspiel. Can you move to this one? Yes, thank you. It's easier when you have the thing before your eyes, Schauspiel. And let us start with the second half. Spiel, as in Wittgenstein's Sprachspiel, language game, refers to an interaction, and in turn, acting can be used as a translation for Schauspielerei. What addresses? That is what actresses or actors do in the theater, im Schauspielhaus, or in a film. The first part of the compound word Schauspiel bears similarity to show, a show. Most of this seems to be relevant to some degree to philodrama as a philosophical practice. My example in the above snapshot, its connection to a quote from a famous painting. So we have a crossover here between different types of art, painting and drama. Please move on, Anastasia, down the text. It's the death of Socrates from David, 1787, only the 2 years before the Great French Revolution. And that may also be understood as talking social sculpture. that has quite some connection to speaking pictures, but also there are differences. Would you please move on?
Mine, that's it with your
You
document.
don't have more. All right.
Yeah, that's it.
So I'm just talking now, and in a translation of what can be seen in this video from the philodrama. Flee shall I, O Criton? Socrates says. And in a soft voice, flee while there is time. And Socrates, we are in no hurry. Look, here is the cup. The Athenians want me to leave this life. But you know, you still have a chance. The chance to drink this cup, that is the law amongst the Athenians. But your fellow citizens, they still need you. You have listened to me, O Criton. Did I not say that one must think of one's own soul to strive for a good life? Think of yourself. O Socrates, but here is the last possibility. Sure, the law speaks for you and against you, but we need you here in Athens, even longer. Oh, friends, why did I send away this Xantippe and my son, that we might not complain, but philosophize? Only now I understand you, O Socrates, says Criton. And Socrates, O Criton, I knew we are friends. We'll just stop here and be short. And sorry that I had tried to push the wrong button.
Okay, Mike, you have a little bit more time. You talked for 4 or 5 minutes. If you want to elaborate, to explain what you're doing in the practice with the drama, please do.
Yes, it is more on the meta level here. I had the chance to propose this idea of a new format of philosophical practice in a meeting with the friends of the Gerd Achenbach Society, the International Philosophical Practice Society, IGPP, in Germany, which is has German as the language. And I translated what I did with my colleagues there. I have the picture, and I use the technique which has been, for example, presented by Goethe as a kind of very stylish attitude in the circles of some people who were well off. They had a good picture, and then they dressed up and they silently delivered the picture as a living sculpture, but silent. And now my small idea is, let this sculpture become a philosophizing sculpture. Let they talk out of their positions. And so it came to this, that I presented Socrates as on the picture there, and I found someone who was acting as the person who was offering the deadly drink. Coming together was really a very playful event. And then, of course, as you have heard, we came to the tragic side of it. And that was, for me, quite a thing which was both very much to the point, the kernel of our philosophic European tradition, and also a probably way to kind of revitalize dead language, written text, into vivid spoken interaction.
And the philosophical aspect of it is, but enacting it, you believe that people understand it better? Or after that, do you have a discussion of it? Or
Yes.
how?
Yes, of course. And also,
so, yes,
you
if
have-
you could explain this, please.
Yes, the understanding. I mean, if you have a reading group on this part on Plato, then you would just choose a scene in which you can reenact what has been just passed on to us by written text.
And you think that by doing it through the body, the understanding is better than just through words?
Oh, I agree, definitely. It has a lot to do with involving more than just the linear following up of letter by letter or word by word. There's much more going on if you speak.
Because if you have to imitate that, to enact that, to create that, then you have to feel those emotions and then you understand better. This is what you're saying?
Yes. I mean, it has a lot of similarities to a lot of things that Shanti also mentioned. One gets into a feeling of this incredible contrast. There's this beloved teacher, Socrates, and his friends, and he is just tragically sentenced to go away, to death.
Okay. Do you use drama with other things than this initial drama of Socrates' death in other settings, other dialogues, other philosophical practices work?
Yes, I have just read these few pages from my preparation of the workshop that will be on the 29th, and there the philodrama is used in the 20th century by coming together of the three figures, Aaron, who is not so well known as a philosopher, but was quite interested in philosophy, especially in German phenomenology, and the two big stars, Simone de Beauvoir and Sartre. And I'll start with that one on 29th.
Well, you have the three person to create the hell that the other is. So this is good. Final question. These sculptures in wood, did you make them?
Sure. You see, I live in a very old house on the island in the middle of the lake of Constance. Actually, this is the most southern part of Germany, and on the other side is Switzerland. And we have this Swiss society, philopraxis.ch, and there are most of my philosophical contacts. Indeed, I am crossing the borders if Corona regulations allow.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I rectified this. You are from Germany, and I see that
we are some type of German speaking on both sides of this border.
So very nice sculpture. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
For your talk and for explaining, and we will welcome further questions later. And thank you very much for being short. We are moving now to Ola Gringert, who is one of the pioneer of philosophical practice movement, who is the co-director of the Israeli Association of Philosophical Practice, the co-president. She's writing now a book for that lexicon series of philosophical practice. And we are keen to hear about the use of literature in philosophical practice. Please, Ora.
Well, you helped me by talking about mentioning the Greek drama and the Renaissance literature, and I could mention the Homeric epos or Gilgamesh epos or the Bible. Uh, Literature seems to be always concerned with philosophy in some way or another way. Anyway, modern literature, and by this I mean since the beginning of the 20th centuries, and some starting with Joyce and Proust, going through Beckett, and maybe I'll finish with Cortázar, are talking about something very, very different, that describing reality that is very ambiguous and very ambivalent, and I think that that's a reality we have to deal with nowadays, not with clear-cut ideals of the Renaissance where you know what is good and what is bad, and everybody knows that Socrates, it's better than that he died. I don't think so. If I think about Stoppard, for instance, changing Hamlet's, inviting Guildenstern and Morgenstern to change the story. I think that we don't live in the ancient times, and we don't live in Renaissance time. So the same applies to the ideas of philosophers about literature. We have the ideas of Aristotle, we have the ideas of Hegel, and we have the ideas of Goethe, but I think that they wouldn't be able to manage with literature as it is today. Ambiguous, not optimistic, not lost in ambivalence of values, and this is I repeat, this is the reality that we have to cope with. This is the reality that I meet with my counselors. If any of my counselors came with a decision Socrates did, whether to commit suicide for the sake of philosophy or whether to continue to live, I would recommend continue living rather than dying for philosophy. Living for philosophy perhaps is a better option. And but the question is not what I need. The question is what fits counseling. And we can come with a very beautiful idea. Take Cortázar story, how it's called, the owned house. It's only 4 pages. 4 pages of telling of a brother and sister living in the same house, and they have the feeling that somebody else is entering the house, and little by little they move aside. And that's a story, and one can connect it to the Peronist. It was written in 46, so some connect it to Peronism, some connect it to Hitler, but some write it in a very optimistic way, like this, endlessly they leave the house, not like the Chekhovian protagonists that stay in the farm, in the Ahuzah, how do you say it? In the house, in the
estate. Yes. Estate.
In the state, and like Uncle Vanya, the rest monotonous, and well, I love Chekhov, and it's not, but they don't move. And in Cortázar short story, they move, and we have to explain why. And I think that the ambiguity, it's precisely what can do in literature now. But the problem is that I don't decide who is the counselor. As a counselor can be a person that doesn't read books, that is not tuned to literature, not tuned to poetry or anything. And I say that nevertheless, it can, or drama or whatever. I had now a counselor. The only thing he's read is the encyclopedia for young people. And he came to me, and music is just karaoke, singing karaoke with the you know what karaoke is, yeah? Okay, so he's singing a Oriental a song with all the silsulim. How do you say it, with the voice? But no, nothing from my world belonged to the world of this guy. And what can I do with it? And it was very difficult at the beginning to talk to him. And then he said, you know, I also listen in the radio. I heard Carmen, and it spoke to me. So I started, I started Prosper Mérimée, and I told him, please read the story of Carmen and tell me, with whom are you identifying yourself? Who talks to you more? And so starting to talk about Carmen and the drama of Carmen, the conflicts of Carmen, was a way to start with this guy to know him a little better and to make him think a little better. And if you had asked me before, would I take Prosper Mérimée for, challenging my clients, it was beyond me. You think like Shakespeare, I don't know, Prosper Mérimée. But it's really, you go with a client or with a counselor, as you call it, where he is, and you have to find the text that can talk to him, or better, the text that can start make him talk and start make him think. And I'm astonished with this guy. At the beginning, I was laughing at. He arrives at such beautiful philosophical insights during little texts that I propose here and there. For instance, I recommend, and this is not literature, to read what's his name, Frankl, about the meaning of life. And he arrived through it to something which I didn't expect at all. So the use of literature with living people, with their world, with their level of understanding, is something very different than what we know about the history of art or literature or critique of art of literature or philosophy of art of literature.
Thank you very much, Ora. Thank you so much. Of course, honoring our Russian friends, let me just say that, Israel was created even before the state of Israel with waves of immigrants from Russia. So we have in Hebrew translation of the main poetry. I don't talk even about the great literature which represents Dostoevsky and Tolstoy philosophies of life. Yeah, you talked about that, but of course, Chekhov and but not only that, Russian poetry, we have it in Hebrew. So I'm sure that the Russian colleagues can use all these ideas about literature and poetry in philosophical practice much more than we can propose here. This is just an introduction. Thank you so much, Ora, also for being on time and for pointing that we should find maybe the right text and the right poem and that sentence that I could not forget to make the client stop talking and begin thinking. Yes, this is very good. Thank you. So we will, of course, have a discussion. I'm just joking, Ora. Don't take it badly. It was a good sentence. I understand. Stop talking idlessly and begin thinking more constructively. Yes. So we will have further questions for Ora later. So Shanti now, who made an effort, although she's using various arts and wanting something different from the other lecturers, and she agreed to speak this time about painting. And she is a very prolific and successful philosophical counselor from the United States. I'm sorry, I'm sticking to the minimal thing. She has also how can I say, she has been trained in other forms of counseling. She's an existential therapist, I think, as well. She has a PhD in that or something else. I'm sorry if I'm misrepresenting you. You could explain it better now. I see now your partner. I'm happy to say hello and for the first time. So please, Shanti, painting and philosophical practice, how does it work?
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. So my presentation centers around how paintings, especially those from the Expressionist period, convey philosophical ideas and how I use these philosophical concepts to inform my work with clients. Recurring leitmotifs will be illustrated through the works of Edvard Munch, a 20th century Norwegian Expressionist painter. Philosophy, religion, and psychology suggest that art in general springs from our need to recognize ourselves in the world, in objects as well as in other human beings. In art, as in philosophy and religion, this externalization and self-recognition concerns itself with the highest things. Through this process, art, with its ability to express the infinite and the universal, and at the same time, the finite and the particular. It passes from the poetry of imagination to the prose of thought, from the pure appearance of the idea to sensory identification with it. Painting could be defined as a sensible experience of showing the meaning of being human. It shows us what is active in ourselves. The general significance of a specific but universal feeling is made manifest while being portrayed in a concrete particular instance. In this way, painting provides us with a dialectical unity between the inner and outer worlds and between universal and particular experiences. Paintings compel our attention epistemically. When we view a painting, we recognize and feel important dimensions of our own subjectivity, concretely expressed. Paintings, especially of the realistic and expressionist period, are embodiments of self-related subjectivity. Such an experience is a kind of self-intimacy, a reflection of the spirit. Paintings can intimate things that are not fully shown. They exhibit our interiority in ways that are visible and felt. Take a look at this painting. What archetypal existential situation is portrayed here? How does the image make you feel? Fine art is said to awaken us a response to everything that has a place in the human spirit. It enlivens our slumbering feelings, inclinations, and passions of every kind. Indeed, it leads us through the whole gamut of feelings which the human heart can bear. We learn something about the life of such feelings and situations when we see them externalized in paintings. This painting is by Edvard Munch, a Norwegian artist who was born in 1863 and died in 1944. Throughout his life, Munch was attracted to the allegorical symbolism he found in his compatriot, the playwright Henrik Ibsen. Similarities in their works include portraying their dramatic offerings at the moment of crisis, the staging of conflicts of passion, remorse, illness, and death, and concerns with the dilemmas of bourgeois society. Just as Ibsen is considered the father of modern theater, Munch is considered the pioneer of modern painting and of depicting modern emotional experience. Munch utilizes very radical, symbolic, expressionist language and diverse artistic strategies to orient space towards a psychic dimension. He gives visual expression to a narrative about the impulses and hidden obsessions of humankind. With his focus on philosophical and spiritual matters, he paints scenes in which people suffer and love. He represents the world based on instances of reality, which are emotional archetypes. His conceptual points of view correspond to feelings of solitude, melancholy, and passion, through the postures and physical attitudes of characters who remain frozen in a kind of static tension at the precise moment they assume the expression of the state of mind he wished to represent. These qualities of expressionist painting in general, and of Edvard Munch's work in particular, were what prompted me to utilize them with family I was working with a few years ago. I sought to prompt in a unique way a sustained, reflective, and involving dialogue about their situation. Theirs was a case in which each of the three individuals involved, the parents and their 13-year-old daughter, to whom I give the pseudonyms of Jack, Jill, and Anna, had little to no awareness of what they were doing or why. When Jack and Jill brought Anna to me, she was exhibiting many of the symptoms of what psychologists call an oppositional defiance disorder. She was frequently irritable, argumentative, vindictive, and aggressive. Rather than seeing her as having a disorder, I experienced her as endeavoring to integrate the many demands and drives she experienced within herself as an individuating teenager, while simultaneously facing the many dictates, apparent contradictions, and imperatives from her family and from the community. Anna had a normal need to harmonize these external demands with her drive for integration and harmony within herself. Unfortunately, she had been unable to accomplish this archetypal task in large part because her parents, fragmented individuals themselves, unconsciously pitted human beings one against another in a dog-eat-dog struggle for survival and ascendancy. This led the whole family to envision self-fulfillment and self-satisfaction in an extremely materialistic, atomistic, and fragmented manner. A healthy, non-fragmented self finds her own fulfillment, at least in part, through the joy and fulfillment of others. This state can only be maximized through authentic democracy, which Jack and Jill had not established within their family matrix. In order to successfully individuate, an ethical paradigmatic model for a healthy family life, which includes unity and diversity, needs to be in place. It was not in this case. Anna could not individuate in this situation, which was a big reason for her anger. In addition to experiencing not being understood, Anna was suffering from all 7 major causes of existential anxiety: birth, death, nihilism, evil, freedom, individuality, and guilt. She was trying to give birth to herself as a unique person. Her grandfather had recently died, and her philosophical nature and advancing maturity enabled her to see the evil in the world around her. She was also experiencing guilt over her oppositional behavior, which was causing problems for everyone, as well as guilt over having killed animals in her hunting expeditions with her father and her grandfather. Such complex vulnerabilities. How were this family and I going to sort them out and get to the bottom of them? One of the ways I hoped to do so was by introducing them to relevant works by Edvard Munch. His paintings might enable them to see internal responses which they would normally hide from themselves and from one another. They might also help to normalize Anna's anxiety, which could buy some time while we all worked to sort out causes and cures in a healthy way. The issues the family had brought up as presenting problems, anger, anxiety, unresolved grief, could all be informed by Edvard Munch's paintings. They could encourage a certain state of subjectivity, of what it might be like for Anna to be Anna. They could also potentially help her parents as outsiders to understand what it was like to be her, and to possibly set aside some of their old ideals and conventions, and thus allow their daughter's anguish, anxiety, and uncertainty to exist. After reviewing Munch's entire oeuvre, I chose 5 of his works which illustrate what it is like to be an adolescent girl emerging into puberty alone, without a self, while trying to fake it. The parents themselves had fled from and falsely denied their own adolescent experiences. Rather than allowing Anna to figure things out, they wanted to settle the questions for her. I hoped that through their reflecting on these paintings, practical reason and love would kick in. enabling them to see their failure to help Anna understand herself. I hoped they would see that no matter the inconvenience to them, they should stop avoiding the necessary conditions for Anna's life to have any value for herself. Next slide, please. The first painting I chose is entitled Puberty, which portrays a naked girl on the cusp of womanhood. It reflects the complexities of growing into adolescence with all its vulnerabilities, including the awakening of sexual desire. The girl, seated on the edge of the bed, is ill at ease under the threatening shadow that looms over her. Anna was at the age that nothing could be counted as good for her unless it was confirmed and recognized as such by others, those others being most especially her parents. I hoped this painting would evoke empathetic responses from them, which would allow Anna to use a strategy of moving forward rather than using an unrefined and not well thought out strategy of oppositional defiance. Next slide. This painting is called Street in Asgardstrand. This is another of Munch's paintings, which includes a common dilemma in the life of an adolescent girl. In the background, two people are having a neighborly chat. Up front, seen in challenging close-up, is a little girl fixing a frightened, reproachful gaze at us. The three boys lying on the road behind her, staring at her, may have something to do with her state. Their position is one of uninhibited lack of restraint. As a group of males, they are pressuring and embarrassing her. Through this painting, I hoped to evoke discussions of similar experiences Anna might be having as she developed into a woman, which could also be a part of her anxiety. Next slide. Death in the child. Because neither of the parents had experienced the loss of a close loved one, their ability to understand and empathize with their daughter was limited. I hope this painting of the terrible disorientation of a child upon the experience of death would elicit more open-ended discussions with Anna regarding her experience of death and discussions of questions like, why are we here? And what's it all about? This slide is related. It ends up when a person is not really seeing, they can often end up just feeling like a ghost of a person. And I think this was a large reason for my client's anger. Next slide. And of course, this is the scream, which is an archetypal image of existential angst. And with this painting, I hope the parents would link some of Anna's anxiety to the defenselessness she was likely feeling in the face of trying to individuate and accept the realities of death and loss. This painting is called Compassion, and the subject of mother and child occupied many of Munch's paintings. In this painting, the openness and vulnerability of one to the other is something I hope to promote in the relationship between the mother and daughter. The mother had very little emotional awareness and she lacked empathy, which colored how she related to Anna. I wanted to give her a new viewpoint of how that relationship could be. And lastly, this painting of Inga Munch, which is Edvard Munch's sister. And I chose this painting for its strength in portraying a woman contained within herself. Her gaze is equally focused between the inner and the outer, a state I wish to encourage in Anna. Although in the end, Anna and her parents turned down the opportunity to work together for change, their narrative offers an opportunity for reflection on how bad we often are at understanding one another. Groucho Marx famously said, nowadays, sincerity's the thing. Once you can fake it, you've got it made. Modern art forces the issue of sincerity to one's experience and to absolute honesty in expressing it. A life in which even the possible expression of sincerity had to be confirmed by Anna's parents did not meet this condition. In this case, neither I nor Edvard Munch could be of help in making things otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shanti, for being right on time. I just wanted to make sure, did you see the slides? I didn't, but did everybody see them? Yes? Good. That's very good. Thank you so much. It was enlightening. Well, I wonder if I should share one anecdote I had. You know that monk picture that's called The Shout, and you have the impression that it's a terrible anxiety attack. And actually, I read that it was just portraying someone shouting on the bridge to another person. So what can we say? We interpret things, and it got, with time, associated with a terrible anxiety. But sometimes just calling for another friend may be also anxiety. All right. So finally, a very interesting topic, you know, since Plato, since the Pythagoreans, and for me especially, is Leo. Leo, if I'm not pronouncing your family name correctly, please correct me when it's your turn to talk. Hemmetsberger from Austria, that
Perfect.
Thank you, uses music in philosophical practice. I must thank Donata for telling me that if I'm looking for that, Leo is the man. He also shared with you a YouTube address in which you can have more information about his work. And Leo, the ground is yours.
Thank you very much. So thank you for your short introduction. I'm a philosopher working in the field of applied philosophy since 2007. I am, among many others, one of the founders of the first postgraduate university course for philosophical practice in German-speaking Europe at the Vienna University. And I put some links on the chat so you can follow them and look at the website after my speech. Maybe, or I will send them to Lydia or to Alexandra so they can pass them on. So at this course, I'm a lecturer and diploma examiner, and there as well, I am also the chairman of the Association of Applied Philosophy in Austria with more than 30 members. And since 2013, I'm organizing the event Nights of Philosophy this year on the 17th to the 19th November in Vienna and all other Austrian towns, with more than 20 performing philosophers, and almost 50% of these philosophers are female philosophers, which makes me very proud. So I'm not working on only at the university, but I'm also doing my philosophical workshops. And many participants of my applied workshops have no philosophical background. So it is hard to follow a philosophical lecture without breaks, so they need time to think about what has been said. And to solve this problem, I'm combining my lectures with music. My instrument is called the hang drum, and it's an instrument which makes, you will hear it, which makes very smooth sounds. So you get in some kind of meditation mindset. And there are also various musicians who are joining me on my shows. The during of these shows, of these lectures, are approximately 1.5 hours. And I have a camera operator and an audio technician, so they are recording all the lectures. All of them are in German, I'm very sorry. And but they are visible on the website. You find them on YouTube, as Lydia already mentioned, on Instagram. I'm a little bit keen to social media, and there is also a podcast on Spotify where you can find these pieces of the lectures. So now I would like to give you a short example of my performances, and every time the performance starts, of course, with music.
Leo, it is.
Thank you for
we
having
can't
me.
see you. We can't see you.
You can't see, but you
playing.
see, now you see the instrument.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what it looks like. It's made of metal and it's some kind of a percussion instrument. It comes from Switzerland, exactly comes from Bern. And yes, I'm playing them now for a couple of years. So I'm starting my lectures with music, and I just given you now a short example of how this lecture would go on. So thank you for having me and even giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts with you tonight. And the title of the short performance is "What is Knowledge?" And it will consist of some philosophical quotes and thoughts and music performed on this instrument called hang. So first, what is knowledge? Philosophy has been asking this question for 2,500 years, and we are still not sure yet. Let me try to explain this by quoting former US Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, who recently passed away. When asked about the Iraq crisis, let me quote, "There are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and there are unknown unknowns." So there are things we know, and we know that we know. There are things we know that we don't know, and this is the standard scientific approach to unveil the unknown. But there are also the unknown unknown. So there are things we cannot know, that we don't know them, things that are out of context, black swan events, may be called. But the fourth possibility is the one he missed. And these are the unknown knowns, that there are things we know or should know, but we don't want to know them. And that is, for example, the starting point of psychoanalysis. Second, the sophist Gorgias, who is well known from Plato's dialogues and lived around 400 BC, he said, let me quote again, "Nothing exists. And even if something exists, nothing can be known about it. And even if something can be known about it, knowledge about it cannot be communicated to others." End of quote. And knowledge economy uses knowledge, on the other hand, to generate tangible and intangible values. So says Wikipedia. So is knowledge nowadays just a business product or a productive asset? The key problem is the vague definition of knowledge, because data or information is usually not equivalent to knowledge. So what is your definition? Socrates would ask. Peter Drucker, management guru and one of the founders of the term knowledge economy, who got many of his ideas from Kondratiev, Frederick Taylor, and Schumpeter, said, knowledge is between two ears, and only between two ears. You cannot manage knowledge. So what is data, information, knowledge, wisdom? Worldwide, we are collecting a huge amount of data. And what is the difference between data and information? Gregory Bateson, one of the founders of cybernetics in biology, said, information is a difference that makes a difference. To put this information into the appropriate context, so that it generates knowledge, we need judgment. So we never can be quite clear whether we are referring to the world as it is or the world as we see it. So does wisdom evolve out of knowledge? What is wisdom? Wisdom, as my favorite definition, wisdom is prevention. Avoid the problem so you don't have to solve it. Finally, let me refer to Epictetus, a Stoic Roman philosopher who lived about 150 AD. The following quote seems quite contemporary, considering the number of people in our world who deal with existential fears and anxiety problems. Quote, "Man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems." End of quote. So, this is my little. This was my little introduction, and how I am giving my philosophical practice speeches and lectures, and I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Leo, for this wonderful talk and for actually exemplifying your skills as a musician with this amazing instrument. Let me just add, just so we have an idea of what can be done with music. I used to have a radio program for 7 years, and I was told that I have to put some music every 5 or 7 minutes. So every week it was another topic like friendship, love, knowledge, etc. And I used music in a way that would convey the internationality, the cosmopolitanism of the problem. And in the words, of course, in the genres of music, where the opera, classical music, religious music, pop music, rock music, and different languages, and also using the sounds themselves so that they would help process every answer before we move to another one, and not just music that would distract the audience. Let me just rectify something a little bit. You said, what is knowledge? The thinking began 2,500 years ago. In the West, we have our friends now from India. I see Bala. I see other from other places. So this will be an introduction to open the floor. I see Carmen from Peru. I see Lydia Ginsburg from Israel, Pia from Finland. I see Pepe from Spain and many others, of course, are Russian friends. I open the floor for discussion. First, if you want to address something that was said and to ask for further information about that, if you want to share what you're doing in your own countries, in your own languages, in your own cultures with different arts. And I would ask Stasia, please, to help me choose the people, just to designate the people because I do not see them well. And then we can have this discussion. We have enough time. Thank you all for being shorter than we planned. Please, Stasia, who's first?
Okay, yeah, let's manage our questions. So if you have a question, you can turn on your microphone and ask it orally, or you can type it in a chat, yeah, and I will read it for you. So let's do like that.
So it can be a question, it can be a comment, it can be sharing something. It's not necessarily a question. But as we left time, it has to be something.
Okay, let me start then. Well, this is a lovely workshop. The very idea of the session is wonderful, I think very promising. And all of the approaches are really interesting, but I must say, Leo, that is fascinating. I very much appreciate just the opportunity to experience as opposed to you explaining that you do this. It really gives a greater clarity about the kind of approach you are using there. And I do have a specific question for you, which is, what would you say that you were bringing in with the music that wouldn't be there if the music wasn't there? What exactly do you think is the difference that it makes when you use the music as you just did?
So Leo, I think the question is for you first, please.
Yes, what I'm giving the audience is time to think about what just was said. So the music is giving them a different state of mind because you are not related to words. You receive the impression of the argument, and then you have time to be open to some kind of resonance of your own thinking about the problems, which are the theme of the evening. And when I'm finished with my lecture, including the music, then often the discussion starts between the participants, and there's a lot of talks and a lot of fun, beer drinking, having a glass of wine, and it's sometimes it's a little symposium-like, you know. Yes, it is. So it's a different state of mind you get in when you're listening to music. And also, my experience is the music should not too. I love rock music. I love jazz. I love very complicated jazz music, but that's not the kind of music which is helpful in this context. So it's smooth with maybe a clarinet or a saxophone or a contrabass is joining, and yes, to get them in a different mindset.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for your question.
Another comment or question? Query?
We have one question in a chat, so by Oleg. My question is probably addressed to all speakers. What do you think about the possibility of using cinema in philosophical counseling?
Yeah, very good question. Let me say, we had only, 1 hour and a half. Cinema is a very good and easy, relatively, idea, although movies are long. So who would like to address that first? Maybe Vona? Are you here, Vona?
Vona, please turn on your microphone. We do not hear you.
I'm sorry, I did not hear the question very well, so let somebody else pick up on it.
The question was, what do you think about involving movies, cinema in philosophical practice? So my own question to you, did you ever do that, or do you think it's a good idea? Can you share something about that?
Yes, I think all the arts are useful in philosophical practice. I have an article in Philosophical Practice a long time ago about art and the good life, and I think there are many, many issues that all the arts can address. I use poetry predominantly, but I think cinema is very useful. There's a lot of philosophy of film. I think I was interested in Mike Roth's presentation. I was wondering how that related to psychodrama. So I don't use music very much, except one time when I was working with juveniles in a detention facility, I used a lot of gangsta and hip hop, looking at the messages in that. So I think almost every one of the arts has something to contribute. And if I've missed one, I'm sorry, because there's so many different manifestations of art. So as I say, I use poetry a lot. I think it's a great opening to philosophical dialogue. And sometimes you can, I usually start with many group sessions with Mary Oliver's poem, The Journey. And because we are taking a journey together in philosophical counseling.
Thank you, Vona. Mike, talking about drama, it seems that you will be closest to movies, but in your drama, you enact it. Movies, it's a little bit more difficult, more costly, I think. So what do you think about mixing movies in philosophical practice?
Yes, I think it's not the professional movies, but if you engage in actually doing this philodrama in a group, for example, a group that is dealing with a new book or so, then a video which has been taken in a lucky situation can help to start and get into deep water, stormy weather probably, when you do it again with another bunch of people.
Yeah. Would you care to answer shortly Vona's concern about the relationship between what you're doing and psychodrama?
Yes, I will. We had an institute of Moreno here at the Lake of Constance, and I participated there, and I find the original ideas of the child Moreno in Vienna with what has been called Stegreifspiel. Maybe Leo can translate that into English. Stegreifspiel. Well, it's kind of improv theater.
Improv.
But Stegreifspiel as what children do without any therapeutical and so on ideas, a cultural practice that was and still is, I think, very widespread among certain age groups. Yes, and of course the difference could be that in philodrama, you are not so much concentrating on the psychic aspects, but you always have philosophy, that is philosophical texts, in the background or next to you. Well, is that a good answer?
Yes, yes, for the moment. Thank you so much. Ora, would you like to add something about philosophy and the movies? Ora, are you here?
It's like Prosper Mary May helped me with this guy. I can use movies or even cartoons or comics or whatever can speak to the counselee, and I would add to all the examples that were brought here with the same client. As a child, he played the capoeira, and this sport of or capoeira or judo or whatever, this kind of oriental semi-war, semi-play kind of thing can be very, very useful. Dance also can be also very...
Yeah, I'm really sorry we didn't address dance, but with the movies, the question is, of course, does the picture has something to offer us that words maybe won't, you know? So, for example, the movie Carmen, the fantastic movie that was done in the last 20 or 30 years with the fantastic flamenco, yes, is absolutely wonderful because of the movement and the pictures. So can Mary May be in a good contest with that, you know, if it's words versus pictures?
Yeah. You ask me, I think that taking the opera like Bizet, it's very easy to, I mean, the music is easy to follow, and the story is also simple. And thinking about the dance, in some phase of my life, I was interested in sort of psychotherapy, not through the psychology, not a psychoanalytic. And you know, Marcelo, our colleagues, Marcelo's wife,
yes,
she did dance therapy. And I mean, it's a way of opening horizons, which, well, I am doing Feldenkrais, so it's also kind of movement, awareness through movement. I think it's very, very important, and there are many ways. I use metaphors from Feldenkrais, but with this dance therapy, she gave us an exercise. She tells you are closed in a very small space. You are closed in a space, and what do? So my imagination went to Bosch, and I saw myself in a kind of small balloon, like in Bosch in hell, and felt myself very, very close and smothered. And another person, she didn't, I mean, they told her a closed space, but for her, a closed space was a grand hall, and she was dancing through the hall, and I just realized through our different reaction to space and movement and time, that it can be very different. And maybe I don't have to be close although I admire Bosch as a painter, still I'm not have to be one of his miserable in hell. There can other conceptions of space, time, and closeness that can give me a lot of freedom.
So thank you for bringing, Ora, thank you for bringing also dance to the discussion. So now when I move to Shanti first and Leo, please address movies and also dance.
Nah. Well, what I wanted to say about movies is there's a book called Positive Psychology at the Movies. And positive psychology, as you know, they're interested in eudaimonia, and they're interested in the good life through living the virtues, and they define different virtues as character strengths like wisdom, humor, spirituality, temperance. So this book, if you want to use movies and you have clients with a particular virtue that you want them to explore, they have already divided in each category. They have about a list of at least 30 or 40 movies with explanations of what the movies are about and what level of, and questions to help you think about. And I've often turned to these movies, especially like clients who have families and they're dealing with an issue in the family like honesty. Okay, so then I go to this book, I find some movies that deal with the topic, they show the movie at home and then they discuss it, they've got questions. So I really highly recommend this book, Positive Psychology at the Movies. Is the best one I've seen that helps to deal with helping people understand character strengths and virtues.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Shanti. Finally, Leo, shortly, because we would like to have more questions. Dance and maybe movies. You have to add something.
Okay, I'm dance and movies. So one of my colleagues, Martin Poltrum, has a lot of experience working with movie scenes, dealing in therapy with people with addictions. So he picks just scenes and then their discussion what's going on in this scene, and he said it was a very, very helpful tool at an institution here in Austria where they are dealing with alcohol addiction and other forms of addiction, and he does philosophical practice there. And dance, we had one participant at our university course, and she combined philosophical practice with tango.
Yeah. Yes.
Tuning together.
Yes. I've seen in Vienna people tango in the summer. Yes.
So as it takes two to tango, it also it takes two to philosophy. So to philosophize. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is interesting. Thank you very much. Shanti, there is a question from Pepe to you. Maybe you can answer through the chat. Stasia, please, are there more questions?
Yeah, we have Pia Honi raising her hand. So yeah.
Hand as well.
Okay.
Yes, Pia.
I'm waving like this as well. Okay, thank you. I just want to share very shortly about few comments, because I'm working very much with the art and the philosophy together, and that's one of my passion area, to be honest. I think it's interesting that I find out that we have so much opportunities to using different types of art with the philosophy together, and also we can approach to the art in the different ways. Like some of your speeches, I find out that you have some kind of reception approach, that we can reading something, or we can see some paints and starting to philosophizing, that we're using art in that way. And example for my interest is that, but I'm also very interested about some kind of applied art, that people really to participate in the workshop where they are doing by themselves some art activities. And I like to calling this the way to work art-based philosophizing, which is very interesting. I have running out the numbers of the workshop with this, and the people usually say, no, I can't painting, I can't doing this because I'm so bored. But when you activated people, they really starting to doing things. And I find out that art as a language, it can be like the different type of language, that it's open people's mind, it's open their experiences. It could be like a path for your thinking processes and helping them. And of course we have, the totally this kind of research area, which we're calling aesthetics, which is the art philosophy by itself. So it's very, very interesting that there is a lot of opportunities. I'm sure we have numbers of things to do in the future with art and philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pia. I know doing this, we had many lecturers. I couldn't add one. Unfortunately, I gave my space. That's very kind to be humble enough to share your comments at the end of the panel. Thank you. Stasia, do we have yet another comment or question?
Yeah, we have Aura raising her hand. So,
yes.
I would like to remind you, perhaps, Leo, the Austrian origin phenomenologist Alfred Schütz. He mentioned what I like very much in how we understand the other, when we understand, and what do we know about the other. And then he gave the example of making music together as a kind of experience of growing older together. So we don't understand, we don't make expectations about the other by making music together, but we adapt ourselves because we are playing on the same theme. And I think somebody wrote about jazz, making jazz together. It wasn't Alfred Schütz's notion of music, more camera music. But I think this is very important, making music together.
Yes.
Lahat is the expression of going into doing some kind of free jazz after a known standard. And other people also use this metaphor of playing together and philosophizing together.
Listen, the prime job of a chairwoman is to keep time. So let me just, I'm sorry, I cannot address the last question. We can continue to chat, write to my email and I forward it to everybody. Let me just summarize this by saying that, of course, if we bring philosophy as a abstract and theoretical discipline to life, we would need the senses. And so art will be either, opening to different senses or mixing them or using our own senses to express things that maybe words are not the best, or maybe philosophic words are too difficult to master for the moment. So there's a lot more possibilities with art and philosophy. Let me just offer you that we will meet and dance together in a retreat. I know that in one of my birthdays, when I offered my philosophical friends to come and dance with me in a club, and we danced for hours, it changed our relationship. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for participating. We have to go now. Thank you so much for our Russian host, and thank you for a great conference that just begins today. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lydia. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for your help. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you very much.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Pia. Thank you. Thank you, Leo. Thank you.